Hej igen. Det er Christoffer Særkjær igen, og jeg har den sidste dokumentation til modul 3. Jeg har valgt Who's Irish, og jeg synes, jeg skal bare gå i gang med det. Så, Who's Irish? This novel contains a precise description of how the cultural differences can lead to misunderstandings, mistakes, and as it's in the word, increases the difference between humans and cultures. And the storyteller is grandmother to the girl Sophia. She starts off telling about life with her husband. She was a tough woman, as she tells everyone was afraid of her, even her husband. This toughness has been passed down to her daughter, and she explains proudly of how she has become the vice president of a bank. But unfortunately, Sophie, her granddaughter, takes after her father's family, which is Irish. The grandmother explains how kind the daughter is in the case of when she's winning an argument and doesn't look at the losing opponent to prevent her from feeling bad. We are introduced to Sophia's father's family and how him and his three brothers all are unemployed. Sophia's grandmother doesn't understand why she needs to be Sophia's babysitter when Sophia's father doesn't even work. He tells us because he's a man, and further explanation isn't necessary. Furthermore, the grandmother doesn't understand how her daughter's husband could have a reason to be depressed, which might be just the case in this story. She believes he has everything that a man might need. But luckily, the husband gets a job and needs to maintain all his focus on the job. And this is the time when the grandmother takes the raising of Sophia in her own hands, because she thinks her daughter and her husband are too soft on her. Sophia needs to be spanked, and that's exactly what she intends to do. And Sophia actually listens when she gets punished physically. Of course, the parents doesn't know anything about it. But later in the story, an accident occurs, and Sophia becomes hard to control. It all ends up with the grandmother to accidentally hit her hard with a stick, and Sophia gets a swollen eye and some bruises. The parents finds out about it, and all the previous spanking, and the parents finds out about it and all the previous spanking. Now the grandmother is asked to leave the house, which she has lived in with the daughter's family up until now. In Who's Irish, it's clearly to see that that what the grandmother expects Sophia to be and what the parents understand she is are two very different things. The grandmother wants her to be the little obedient Chinese girl who do everything that is expected of her, and she intends to raise her that way, even if it takes some spanking. Sophia's parents think otherwise. They believe in creativity, which is a different word for the grandmother. That means they need to let her go through some phases with understanding, caring, instead of punishment. And for that to work, they need to use the words instead of punishment. It must have been quite a culture shock for the grandmother when she moved out of her own country. And there's still a lot of things she hasn't understood yet, and she doesn't want to either. But when you think about it, it must be very confusing for a child like Sophia to understand all this. In the novel One of My Best Friends, we get the chance to see how meaningless the cultural differences might be to a child. Because how is Sophia supposed to understand how come a grandmother spanks her when her parents tell her something like that is wrong? What is she supposed to do when the people who are the most close to her expect different things of you. Of course, you don't understand as a child that it is cultural differences which is the confusing factor. So therefore, you get confused. As when a parent picked her up in the park, she cried and she cried, and that's just a sign that she is confused that a grandmother would treat her this way compared to her parents. And who could expect else from her? And cultural differences is the reason of many misunderstandings, suffering, and sadly at times, as in whose Irish family raised. Ja, det var det. Jeg håber det går ind. Vi ses jo nok i Danmark på et tidspunkt. Så, ha' det godt så længe.